All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. It is Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, and we are live. So this is our class introduction to a 10-week online course that I'm teaching called Ancient Kemet, which is one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So I've been teaching this class on and off for 7 years. It's taken 7 years to develop the class to where it is today. So you're in for a fantastic history course that deals with thousands of years of history, okay? And you're never going to look at history the same way. All right, now we know we're going to have some people that are going to join us throughout this class today. And what we're going to do is I'm going to do we'll do about a 1 hour or so introduction to this course. And then we'll start with class number 1 next Saturday. So you're going to learn a lot. If you register for this class, there's some bonus content that you can watch also. Whenever you get ready to, it's on demand. And also I'm going to upload the class lesson plan for all 10 classes. I have the class lesson plan laid out for all 10 classes because I was working on updating all of that this week, over the past few days. I just finished doing a broadcast on our social media platforms dealing with Denzel Washington going to portray Hannibal Barca in a Netflix movie directed by Antoine Fuqua. And we talk about Hannibal Barca here in the class because we deal with different ancient African empires, especially those that Europeans tried to claim as their own, okay? And Carthage was one of those, okay? So we have the link here. If you missed it, I posted it here. Dealing with that topic, and this is the link here on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Okay, sorry we're running behind schedule today. It's been a crazy day, and I had phone calls, some issues I had to take care of, issues at work that somebody on my staff called me, so I had to take care of some things here. We're running behind schedule, but I had to do this broadcast also before we started the class today. All right, so can everybody hear me? I want to go over a few housekeeping things. Can everybody hear me? Can you see me okay? We're broadcasting through Crowdcast. Now, Crowdcast is the platform that we use to actually broadcast the class. Crowdcast recommends that you use Google Chrome to actually watch the class. You can use Firefox, but Crowdcast recommends that you use Google Chrome, okay? Now, if you watch on a smartphone, you'll want to turn on auto rotate or portrait, whatever it is, so that when you turn the phone sideways, it reorientates, okay, and gives you a wider screen. All right, and if you watch on a smartphone, you may want to use earbuds as well. So this class, we're going to, there's over 200 slides in the class. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, all of that, okay? So let's go to the PowerPoint presentation. We'll look at a little bit of this here. And also what I want to do is I want to deal with some of the history of African-American History Month, Black History Month as well, okay? All right, and then give you a preview of what we'll deal with in this class. Also, you can post here what are some things that you want to learn in this class as well, okay? What are some things you want to learn in this class also? All right, so this is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? And this is March 23rd, February 3rd, 2024, February 3rd, 2024, Okay. At the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. And you can email me, ahnshow@theafricanhistorynetwork.com, ahnshow@theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So this course, and I've taught it in over 8 weeks. I've taught it over 12 weeks. This here is going to be 10 weeks, plus the first class is going to be introduction. Then we're going to have 10 weeks after that, pretty much. This all evolved from a 4.5-hour lecture that I did January 24th, 2014, called Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And this lecture came about because of a number of questions I was getting from people across the country. You know, I was doing the African History Network show on Blog Talk Radio, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is even before I started doing local radio on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF, the African History Network show. This is before I started doing that, because I didn't start that show on 9:10 a.m. WFDF until April of 2016. So I'm doing Blog Talk Radio. This is before I got on the Empowerment Radio Network with Warren Ballantyne, and Professor Griff was on the Empowerment Radio Network early on, and Roland Martin came later. We know Dave Anderson, founder of the Empowerment Radio Network, nationally syndicated radio. That's before I started doing nationally syndicated radio. So this lecture came about because of so many questions I was getting. So I put together this lecture to deal with this history chronologically. And one of the things I saw that was missing was the connection between the history of the African Moors in Europe, taking the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe. And these teachings will bring Europe out of what are known as the Dark Ages. And the connection between that and the transatlantic slave trade, and the connection between the Moors and ancient Africa. That was largely missing. The other thing that was missing from the narrative is the African presence in the Americas dating back tens of thousands of years ago. Okay. That was also missing as well. Okay. So those are some things I dealt with in this presentation. All right. Now, some of this we'll get to next class, but one of the things I also dealt with, and this connects us to ancient African history, is who Imhotep was. Okay. Who Imhotep was. So, Imhotep, Imhotep, Imhotep was one of the greatest people who ever lived in human history. It's pronounced Imhotep, it's pronounced Emhotep. And Imhotep comes from the ancient Medu-Neter language of the ancient Egyptians, and it means he who comes in peace. Okay, he who comes in peace. So, and these are the ancient Kemites, ancient Egyptians. Now, these were Black Africans. These weren't Arabs. These weren't the Arabs that are there today. That's after Egypt is conquered by the Arabs in 642 Common Era AD. Imhotep was a high priest. He was a physician, architect, mathematician. He was designer of the step pyramid at Saqqara, designer of the step pyramid in Saqqara in Egypt as well. And that's third dynasty. That's for Nasubiti or Pharaoh Zoser of the third dynasty. And he's known as the world's first multi-genius. Okay. And he's going to live somewhere around 3000 BC. You'll see some variations in period that he lives. Some will put him somewhere around somewhere around 3000 BC. This book here, The Egyptian Philosophers, Ancient African Voices, From Imhotep to Akhenaten, by my friend Malefi Keti Asante, talks about Imhotep also. Okay. And hold on, this talks about Imhotep as well. The Egyptian philosophers, ancient African voices from Imhotep to Akhenaten. Okay. And he talks about ancient philosophers, Kagimni, Sanchi, Imhotep. Imhotep, they put around 2700 BC. You'll see variations, him living somewhere around 2700 BC to about 3000 BC. Depending upon which timeline of history you're looking at, it can be 200 to 300 years old. So because I know at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen, I'll go with the oldest dates that I can find. All right, now, let's go back to this here. And let me change this around. Okay, so these are some statues of Imhotep also. Okay. Some famous statues of Imhotep as well that we see. Now, this is Imhotep. This is not Imhotep. In the 2001 movie, The Mummy Returns, the villain's name was Imhotep. Consequently, many of our children think that one of our greatest ancestors was evil and not of African descent. So in this movie, The Mummy Returns, they have in this movie, The Mummy Returns, they have this Arab Eurasian looking actor named Arnold Vosloo portraying Imhotep. Okay. And in the movie, he's evil. So many of our children see this and think that one of the greatest people in human history was not of African descent, one, and was evil, two. Just totally distort the history. Now here is a here's a picture of the step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by Imhotep for Pharaoh Xochitl. So Imhotep was the architect of this pyramid. Now this is an early form of pyramid building called a mastaba, flat bench pyramid. Mastaba, flat bench pyramid, which is different than the pyramids like we see at Giza, okay, which are more sloped, more intricately designed. Pyramid building technology is going to evolve over hundreds of years. All right, now, what I want to do here, let's look at the pyramid principle quickly, and then I want to deal with some history surrounding Black History Month, okay? Because like I said, we're going to do an introduction today, and then there's some bonus content when you register for this class that you can start watching right now. And then next Saturday, we'll jump in with class number 1, because class number 1 is going to be about 3 hours because of the amount of content I have to cover. So this is one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. And when Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small teach, they talk about the pyramid principle. Pyramid has 3 sizes, the pyramid of Khafre at Giza. The foundation is African history and culture. Our foundation is African history and culture that gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. This gives us a cultural paradigm that we see reality through. And it gives us our self-identity, it gives us our self-esteem, our self-development, our self-worth, our history and culture. People's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. You've heard me say this on the African History Network show. You also hear me talk about how what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, there are two sides of the pyramid. There's economic empowerment. Economic empowerment deals with our economics, how we engage in economic empowerment, business development, business ownership, how we engage in economics, and how we use our economics as well. Do we give away 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us? Do we participate in conspicuous consumption and trying to keep up with the Joneses and the Combses and the Kardashians? Or do we use that to acquire property in our community, own the grocery stores, the gas stations, the radio stations, the TV stations, have control of the political structure in our community, have control of the educational system, buy up the property in our community? And do we utilize the cooperative economics, the co-ops, the cooperative system, or do we engage in white capitalism dressed up in red, black, and green? That deals with our economic empowerment. Okay. Then the other side of the pyramid is our political empowerment. Now, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay. Voting is one aspect of politics. Voting is not politics, is not the total extent of politics. Voting is extremely important. And this is why I say we have to stop telling African Americans to exercise your right to vote. You don't vote for exercise. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You vote for power. You vote for Black power. You vote for policies that are beneficial to you, your family, your community, policies that are beneficial for African Americans, are good for America in general. You vote for people who are going to put policies in place that are beneficial to you. You vote for people who will protect gains that have been made. And you vote also to stop threats, to vote people out of office who are trying to do you harm, generally speaking, and vote to keep people out of office who are trying to do you harm, generally speaking. So we have to understand, so we have to have a synthesis of all three of these, and all three of these work together. Politics impacts every aspect of our lives, from the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat. Politics impacts our economic empowerment and impacts the business environment, whether you have zoning laws that determine what type of businesses can be where, and certain types of businesses can't be within a certain number of feet of churches or schools, how many liquor stores can be in a city. It deals with zoning laws when it comes to restaurants, and restaurants having liquor stores, and you have to get a license from the state to have a liquor license. Okay, that's all politics. That's all dealing with regulation. So we talk about politics when it deals with policing, when it deals with voting rights, when it deals with the courts. So this is why it's important to understand the U.S. Constitution. Okay, in the second class that I teach, Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968, we get deeper into understanding the U.S. Constitution in that second class as well. And your understanding of history, your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Right now, you have talks about the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, okay, of 1868, which is the result of the Civil War ending, slavery ending, and this is one of the three Reconstruction amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Okay, the 14th Amendment Section 3 of the 14th Amendment deals with people who participate in an insurrection being barred from holding political office. Okay, this is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So a lot of people try to act like, oh, this history is all in the past, has nothing to do with today. That's false. That puts you on the trajectory to understand how you got to where you are today. And we're still dealing with the aftermath of the U.S. Civil War, the aftermath of slavery, Jim Crow era, where you had a rewriting of the state constitutions, going back to 1868 when Florida wrote their state constitution and imposed felony disenfranchisement laws, and you lost your right to vote for life, and that was targeting African Americans, because African Americans were 48% of the population of the state of Florida in 1868, 3 years after slavery ended. We look at Florida being the first state to impose poll taxes, 1889, 1890, Mississippi State Constitution of 1890 rewrites the state constitution to impose poll taxes and literacy tests to suppress the African American vote. Okay, this is at a time when you have African Americans in Congress. And then we're going to see other southern states do the same thing. This is after Reconstruction is after the fall of Reconstruction in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877, which was and one of the things that led to Reconstruction ending was the political violence that was inflicted upon African Americans and white Republicans who many at the time were allies of African Americans. The political violence that was inflicted, okay, coming from the Ku Klux Klan and other groups, the White League, the Knights of the White Camellia, these different domestic terrorist organizations. All right, now let's continue here. Okay, so I want to go to look at the lesson plan for this class here. How's everybody doing? Can you all hear me okay? So let's go here. I have the lesson plan in a PDF. Right here. And I'm going to put it in the class on Learn World. Okay, so when you register for this class in Learn World, I have to upload this to the class in Learn World, because Learn World is the platform where these class sessions are housed and this course is housed. Podcast is the platform that we use to actually broadcast this class live. Okay. All right. So if we look here, and I'm gonna walk you through highlight some of the topics that we deal with here in this class, and let's zoom in on this. Took me some time to put all this into the class outline format. Okay, so here we go. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade with a didn't teach you in school. Instructor myself, historian Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. So here's some things that we deal with, and we'll get into this starting next class. Okay, Dinknesh, who Europeans call Lucy, who dates back 3.2 million years ago. She was Australopithecus afarensis. She was known as the mother of humankind, discovered in Ethiopia in 1974. There's a timeline of history that we use in this class also from blackpast.org. I'll show that to you as well. So, and we look at this timeline of history going back hundreds of thousands of years, going back 5 million years ago. We'll talk about the Berlin Conference, to divide Africa, the colonization of the continent by European powers, the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. And we'll look at what this is where the colonies come from during the colonial period, after basically pretty much after slavery ends, these European nations dividing Africa up into colonies. And the geographical boundaries that exist today in Africa largely come from the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. And there were no African representatives at this Berlin Conference either. Okay, there were no African representatives at the Berlin Conference. All right, now we have, let's see here. What determines when Easter is celebrated? So we talk a little bit about this history and astronomy, but dealing with things that are outside the circumference of our own awareness. Dealing with things that are outside the circumference of our own awareness. I like to talk a little bit about, because in the introduction and also in class 1, we deal with laying the foundation to get deeper into this history, because I know people are coming to the class with different levels of understanding of history. Okay, so we deal with laying a foundation that we can build upon to actually understand this history. And one of the things we talk about is Juneteenth, because Juneteenth became a federal holiday in 2022. And it's very important for Juneteenth to be a federal holiday, because that's the only holiday that federally recognizes slavery in this country. Okay, Juneteenth, as I have been teaching, can become a powerful tool to fight for and to help us get reparations, meaning repairing the damage of a legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, redlining, racism, housing discrimination, etc. But we have to correct the history of Juneteenth and protect the history of Juneteenth, because Juneteenth was not the last day of slavery. Okay, June 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger goes into Galveston, Texas, that was not the last day of slavery, because you had some states that didn't end slavery till December 6, 1865, like Georgia. And the 13th Amendment is not ratified until December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment did not become law until December 6, 1865. That's 6 months after Juneteenth. Okay, and the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery either. Okay, so we'll talk about that some next class. Who was Imhotep? We'll talk about that, and we'll get deeper into that next class as well. The world's first multi-genius. The attack on African American history and Black History Month. The attack on African American history and the attack on Black History Month that we've seen across the country. And there are articles that deal with how, because of this anti-critical race theory movement, it makes it harder to teach African American history during Black History Month, because there's so much vagueness about these laws, and teachers are confused about what can be taught, what cannot be taught. Then we also saw Florida attacking the advanced placement college African American studies course as well, right? Now, we'll deal with how Americans know very little about Juneteenth also. We'll look at the difference between dating systems, BC and AD dating systems. These were popularized by an English monk called the Venerable Bede. We'll talk some about the 1619 project, spearheaded, from the New York Times, spearheaded by Nicole Hannah Jones. Because one of the problems, there's some things that are good in the 1619 project, but one of the problems with the 1619 project is it gives the impression that African people first came here in August 20th, 1619, which is not true. 1619 did take place, but we were here for tens of thousands of years before that. It doesn't deal with the African presence in the land we call the United States of America, or what some Native Americans call Turtle Island. It doesn't deal with that history going back, 51,700 years ago at least. Okay, 51,700 years ago at least. It doesn't deal with that history. Okay, so those are some of the things that we talk about here in this class, and we deal with how a lot of what we know about 1619 is correct. It is incorrect. Okay, much of what we've been told about Virginia's 1619 first Africans is wrong. And there was a lot of information that came out In 2019, which was the 400th year anniversary of August 20th, 1619. We'll talk about the year 1526 because the Spanish were taking Africans into the area that we call Georgia and South Carolina in 1526. Okay, this is 93 years before August 20th, 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. All right. Okay, so those are some of the things that we'll deal with in next week. Okay, when we deal with really class number 1. We'll talk about the now one of the things we deal with here in the class is the film Black Panther, Wakanda from Marvel, because the film Black Panther is a very powerful movie. I did extensive research on the film. I have a 3-hour lecture that I've done on the film. It's about 3 months worth of research. There are 11 different African cultures that we see represented in the film Black Panther. So we talk about that film here. And, Ruth Carter, the costume designer, she did research for 6 months on 11 different African cultures. And we see all that represented in the film. So I'm going to show you some of that here in the class. A lot of people thought it was just some made up stuff, a made up movie. No, it's not. Okay. Everything from, we see ancient Kemet represented because Bast, the panther deity Bast that watches over the people of Wakanda, that comes from Bastet, who was an ancient deity in ancient Egypt. We talk about Bantu languages. The word Wakanda comes from, it's a Bantu word, but we see it in Kikongo, the Kikongo Bantu language. And we know Kanda, the word Kanda in Kikongo means family. But Wakanda is also a Native American word. We see it in the Omaha, Ponca, and Sioux Indian languages as well. And it means possesses secret powers. So they have all this in this movie. And a lot of our people just are totally oblivious to it. So the film Black Panther deals with African history, African culture, African language, as well as African spiritual systems. We'll talk about the state of Maryland. Did you know that Maryland did not abolish slavery until almost 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation? Maryland did not abolish slavery until November 1864. Okay, the state of Maryland. And they had to put it on the ballot, and it almost did not pass. There's a good article from the Washington Post called "The Not Quite Free State. Maryland dragged its feet on emancipation during the Civil War." Okay, so that's basically class number 1. Now, in class number 2, we're going to get deeper into this. There's a slide from the Richard Pryor Show, 1977, I like to show, which deals with why the knowledge was hidden from us. And it depicts Richard Pryor as a archaeologist in 1909, and they come across the Book of Coming Forth by Day, or the Book of Life, and you'll see what happens. There's an attempt to keep that history hidden. We talk some more about the film Black Panther. We deal with what is Bantu, what are Bantu languages. Also, we'll talk some about the mythology, the rich mythology that we see in the film Black Panther, and the real life African and indigenous inspirations behind the folklore, behind the mythological lore in the film Black Panther. There's a clip from Malcolm X that I like to show in my presentations and in my classes. And Malcolm X asked the question of, who are you? And this deals with the importance of understanding our history. Now, I also deal with the fact that Malcolm uses the term African American in the Ballad of the Bullet. He used it April 3rd, 1964 in Cleveland, Ohio. And he used the term African American March 29th, 1964 in Washington Heights, New York as well. Contrary to popular belief, the term African American dates back to 1782 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was not created by Reverend Jesse Jackson. I don't know why people, just more simple Simon nonsense people put out with absolutely no research done. But the term African American is a very old term. Reverend Jesse Jackson reintroduced the term 1988, 1989. Reverend Jackson and a team of African American scholars. He did not create the term African American. We were calling ourselves African Americans in the 1960s. And Professor James Small told me this personally because he was there. Also, the term Afro-American dates back to the 1830s. That didn't start in the 1960s. So we'll talk some about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and the book, The ISIS Papers. I knew Dr. Welsing, interviewed her 3 times on the African History Network show. There's some information that I dealing with the Essence Music Festival from 2023. And, the dehumanization of African people and Megan Thee Stallion's performance, Janelle Monáe, and criticism NDRE had of Megan Thee Stallion's performance and Janelle Monáe. And then the pyramid principle also of Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So there's a clip from Kathleen Cleaver, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, that deals with why we wore our hair naturally in the 1960s, 1970s, especially early 70s. And then we'll talk some about Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Now, I interviewed Dr. David Imhotep 13 times on the African History Network show. He passed away in 2023, so he's an ancestor now. He was a friend of mine, and I attended his funeral virtually. I couldn't make it to Virginia for the funeral, but I attended it virtually while it was live. But his book is backed up by 713 footnotes, 7 peer-reviewed articles. And his book explains the African presence in the land we call the United States of America, dating back at least 51,700 years ago, based upon archaeological evidence. We'll talk some about the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet and go all around the world, the short-statured Africans, the Khoisan. And we'll talk about Africa's oldest ethnic group in their fight, the Khoisan, in their fight to keep their ancestral land away from Amazon. There's an article from FaceToFaceAfrica.com about this. Now, one of the things that we'll look at here in this class are archaeological discoveries, okay? And archaeological discoveries that have come out in the last 15, 20 years that cause scientists and anthropologists and archaeologists to push the timelines back, okay? And there's one dealing with the Greek island of Crete and stone tools that are found that date back 130,000 years ago that basically show an African presence on the Greek island of Crete 130,000 years ago. We'll talk about Sarah Bartman, who was Khoisan as well, who was paraded around Europe in a circus that traveled throughout Europe in the early 1800s. And she's going to be, she turns to prostitution as well. She dies when she's about 26 years old, possibly suicide. But I relate the mistreatment and the sexual dehumanization of Sarah J. Bartman, to adultification bias in African-American girls, and how studies show that adults perceive African-American girls to look older, need less nurturing, and know more about sex than their white counterparts. And this is a legacy of slavery that we still see perpetuated in media today, especially negative corporate controlled hip hop. And it has a detrimental impact on the way African-American girls are perceived as well as see themselves. Okay, so that's class number 2. Now, class number 3, we get deeper into archaeological discoveries that prove that we are older than we thought. Okay, so we'll continue with the study for dealing with the Greek island of Crete. There's a good article from the New York Times that deals with this. We'll talk about the lost city of Egypt called Tanis Heraklion. Now, there are 2 lost cities of Egypt that we'll deal with. Tanis Heraklion, one, which we found out about in 2013. But then also there's one called Dazzling Aten that we found out about in about 2021 or so. Dazzling Aten. And that's named after Aten or Akhenaten, who was the Akhenaten, who was the Imhotep IV, who changes his name to Akhenaten. Okay. We'll deal with the discovery of 17 pyramids that were found buried underneath Egypt. This was in 2011. 17 pyramids found buried underneath Egypt, because you're going to see that you're going to have civilizations built on top of civilizations. So we'll look at archaeological discoveries. We'll look at we'll get a better understanding of cooperative economics and the co-op systems, the cooperatives, because these were principles that we brought with us from Africa. These are ancient African principles. And one of the things that I point out in my lectures and in this class is that all the great African civilizations that we like to talk about, and we'll deal with some of those here in this class, they all had some type of political structure. They didn't just have African history and culture. They didn't just play drums and wear African clothing and speak an African language and eat African food. They had control of natural resources. They had farming. They had control of agriculture. They grew their own food. There was some type of economic structure. There was an African marketplace. They did trade with other nations. And they had some type of political structure as well. So that should tell us that it's not just going to be African history alone and playing a djembe drum and speaking Kiswahili or speaking Wolof or speaking Yoruba that's going to empower and save African Americans. We're going to have a synthesis, as we saw in the pyramid principle. We're going to have African history and culture that gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. We're going to have economic empowerment, and we're going to have political empowerment. We have to have a synthesis of all three, not one or two out of the three. We need all three. So we'll talk about the co-ops. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in 2023 opened a credit union. Credit unions are one of the most popular forms of co-ops that exist today. And we'll look at some work from Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard, who wrote the book Collective Courage. And this is one of the best books dealing with the history of the co-ops. And we'll look at some information from her, because like I said, this deals with ancient African principles, the cooperatives. And when we go back and look at our history, going back to, say, for instance, the Free African Society in 1787, which was a co-op. We look at the Colored Farmers Union, about 1882 or so, the 1880s in Texas. We look at the Colored Merchants Association, 1928. The economic empowerment that we had, even during slavery amongst free African Americans up north, we're going to see the cooperatives play a large part in that. When we talk about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it wasn't just the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, which gave a lot of those people land who were former slaves of the Creek Indians, okay? But it was also the, the 1881, is a cooperative, the reformers, it was a cooperative in 1881. Okay, I talked about this in my lecture with Dr. Darrell Scott, where we dealt with Ava DuVernay's documentary, The 13th, and why it's historically inaccurate. We'll talk about how the father of all humankind is 340,000 years old. Okay, this is a good discovery that came out around 2013 or so. YahooNews.com had an article dealing with this as well. Okay, so that's class 3. And then we'll deal with another discovery came out June 2017 in Morocco that showed how they found remains of Homo sapiens that date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago. And this is at least 100,000 years older than the oldest remains they had at the time that dated back about 195,000 years ago that were found in Ethiopia. And when these discoveries take place, the scientists say this is causing them to rethink everything. Okay. Now, African-centered scholars like Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Charles Finch, Dr. David Imhotep, and others have been saying that Homo sapiens are at least 300,000 years old, not 75,000 to 100,000 years old. When we look at these archaeological discoveries, we see at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen. Okay. That's why these archaeological discoveries are so important. And they're showing that we're much older than we thought. And when we look at the work from Dr. David Imhotep, we see that African people were here in the land that we call the United States of America thousands of years before we thought, even before Native Americans came into existence. Now, this does not mean the transatlantic slave trade does not happen. People keep looking at it as either or. No, it's both. Yes, the transatlantic slave trade happened, going back to 1441 when the Portuguese go into what was today known as Mauritania, that area. Yes, the transatlantic slave trade happened, but you have to understand history that existed thousands of years that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. That's one of the reasons why I teach this class. So we can look at like 50,000 years of history as opposed to 500 years of history. We'll deal with the African presence in Asia and the Khoisan and look at some excerpts from work from Runoko Rashidi. We'll talk more about Sarah Bartman. And also there's a discovery that came out of California in 2017 where they found mastodon, remains of a mastodon, which is a prehistoric animal. And these date back about 130,000 years ago. And the scientists are saying that the skeletons were smashed apart by humans. Now, if this is correct, this puts, now African people were the only humans on the face of the earth at this time. This is before Europeans came into existence, before Native Americans came into existence. This puts an African presence in California 130,000 years ago. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. Okay. All right. So that would conclude class 3. So then for class 4, we're going to continue our look at archaeological discoveries that keep pushing the timelines back. There was an article from the New York Post, humans are 100,000 years older than we thought. We'll deal with the African presence in Asia, looking at the Negritos, who were short-statured Africans who were the first inhabitants of the Philippines. There's an excerpt from Hidden Colors 2, dealing with the African presence in Asia we'll look at. We'll talk about the Sentinelese, the Africans in the Andaman Islands, and these endangered Africans, these ancient people. And then there's a good article by Runoko Rashidi dealing with before enslavement, Africa's ancient diaspora. And we'll look at some ancient African history as well. We'll talk about the lost city of Egypt that's about 3,000 years old, called Dazzling Aten, the lost golden city of Egypt. And we'll look at the judgment scene in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, where we see Asar sitting on the throne of judgment. We see the scales of Ma'at. We'll look at, from this mythology, what comes from it, okay? We'll talk about the omics in the Mandinka Egyptian omic connection that Dr. David Imhotep deals with in his book, The First Americans Were Africans Documented Evidence, page 82. And then there's an excerpt of an interview that Rock Newman did with Tony Browder because we use some of Tony Browder's work here in the class, and I'm going to show you excerpts of interviews I've done with Tony Browder also. Black Egyptians entered America 2,500 years ago. Okay. Also, we'll look at the voyage to the Americas that was made by Abubakar II in 1311 AD. Now, in class number 5, we'll deal with Egypt on the Potomac, and we'll look at excerpts from the book Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, which deals with how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of ancient Africa. Okay. And we're going to get deep into this history. We'll look at an African presence in early America before Columbus and slavery. We'll look at ancient Nubia. Okay. That goes back 4,500 BCE, before the Common Era. And ancient Nubia, we know, is the mother of Kemet, the mother of Egypt. And there are twice as many pyramids in this. So in ancient times, the lower portion of Kemet and the upper portion of, today, let me rephrase that. Today, the lower portion of Egypt and the upper portion of Sudan in ancient times is what was called Nubia. Okay. Nubia or Ta-Nehisi. Ta-Nehisi basically means the land of the black-skinned people. So we'll talk some about Nubia as well, the mother of ancient Kemet. Amana Shakito, who was one of the queens of Nubia or Kush, the region Kush, who is also known as a Kandaki, or what you would hear referred to as the Candaces, the Kandakis. We'll look at Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, and I'm going to show you an interview that was done on News One Now with Roland Martin. Attorney Mo Ivory was sitting in for Roland Martin, and they interviewed Tony Browder talking about Egypt on the Potomac, how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of ancient Africa, of ancient Egypt, and the symbolism from ancient Egypt that's all throughout Washington, D.C. We'll talk about the Olmec heads in Mexico as well. And the Tekken is an African symbol of resurrection coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Okay, so this takes us to, you know, what was worshipped now from Aset and Heru. This is where you get the Black Madonna and Child, you know, that was worshipped in Egypt. That's worshipped in Europe. The Black Madonna and Child is worshipped in Europe before the Moors go into Europe, because we know that deities from ancient Kemet influenced the deities in Greece and Rome. Okay. And we're going to show you some comparisons between that. We're going to show you some relationships between those deities. But this is a Tekken. Okay. Now, the Washington Monument is a Tekken. The Washington Monument is an ancient African symbol of the resurrection of Asar. And we'll get into the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. Asar, who's the first king of Kemet, of Egypt in the mythology, and he's cut up into 14 pieces by his brother Set and his wife Aset, who the Greeks called Isis, finds 13 of those 14 pieces and puts them back together. And the 14th piece that was not found, she erects a Tekken to symbolize the resurrection of Asar. The last piece that was not found was the phallus, the penis. There were about 1,200 Tekkenu all throughout ancient Kemet. Today, there are less than 12. And some of those have been taken to other parts of the world. Okay. like Istanbul, Turkey, Paris, France, London, England, and New York City. So they have stolen artifacts from Africa. We look at those artifacts and identify, we associate Greece with them, or we may associate New York City or anything other than ancient Africa with associated with those artifacts. The Washington Monument, the presence of Africa in the Washington monuments, or that African symbol, we know comes from Freemasonry, because the foundation of Freemasonry are the teachings coming from the ancient Egyptian mystery system in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. And we know George Washington was a Freemason. We know that 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. So we see Africa represented in all of this. Okay, so these are some of the things that we're going to deal with here in this class. Let me go back to the timeline. Not the timeline, the outline of this class here. And I'll put the link here for the outline so you can, it's in PDF form. It took me a while to put all this together, then save it as a PDF. Okay. So we'll look at pages 10 through 20 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. If you don't have the book, that's fine. I'll show you excerpts of the book on the screen. So that's class number 5. Now, class number 6, we'll get into the African origins of Star Wars and the Osirian drama. Osirian drama deals with Osir, Aset, and Heru. I'm going to show you an excerpt of the interview. I'm going to show you an excerpt of an interview I did some years ago with one of my teachers, Professor Kabahaya Watha Kamene, where we talk about why ancient Egyptians stopped building pyramids at the end of the 6th dynasty, right around 2300 BC. And we talk about the African origins of Star Wars. And I'm going to show you an excerpt of an interview that George Lucas, who's the father of Star Wars, who created Star Wars, George Lucas did, talking about the influence that his mentor, Joseph Campbell, had on him. And Joseph Campbell taught him about myths. One of those myths was about Asar, Aset, and Heru, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Because if you understand the Osirian drama, you see it represented in the movie Star Wars. And Darth Vader represents both Aset, he represents both Set and Asar, okay? And Luke Skywalker represents Heru, and Luke Skywalker is wearing white, and he represents good. Darth Vader represents evil. But at the end of Return of the Jedi, Heru, or Luke Skywalker, is able to resurrect the good Anakin Skywalker, who Darth Vader was before he became Darth Vader. He's able to resurrect the good out of Darth Vader before Darth Vader dies. And you see Darth Vader kill the Emperor. Okay. So we see all this represented in the movie Star Wars. And what's interesting about Star Wars is that, now I saw Star Wars when it originally was in the theaters in 1977. Okay. I saw the first Star Wars when it originally came out in the theaters in 1977. One of the amazing things about Star Wars is that people thought they were looking at the future. But at the beginning of Star Wars, when the movie, they have the prologue and it's scrolling across the screen and is giving you the background story. It says in a land a long, long time ago, in a place far, far away. You think you're looking at the future, but you're actually looking at the past in Star Wars. You're looking at advances in technology, right? You're looking at understanding the force in the universe. So class number 6, we'll deal with the African origins of Star Wars and the Assyrian drama. We'll look at another archaeological discovery that came out in the last few years. An ancient beer factory was discovered in Egypt that dates back 5,000 years ago. Now, this wasn't St. Ides. Most likely they were using this beer for ceremony or for medicinal purposes. We'll look at page 95 of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization from Tony Browder. Fantastic book. Okay. Probably one of the best books. Probably one of the best books you'll read dealing with African history. Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Let me see what we need to do. I want to do this here. This book right here. Now, once again, you don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. We're going to show you the extras, but if you want to buy them, that's fine. I don't sell them. I'm going to start selling some of these books, but as of yet, I don't. Okay, let's go back to this here. Okay, now, how's everybody doing? Because, like, you all are extremely quiet. Last person that said something was Stephen, like 58 minutes ago. Is everybody okay? I mean, so, is everybody still there? All right. Let's see here. Let's go back to this. Crowdcast changed their menu here, their options, their controls, and I'm still trying to get used to this. We'll look at Egypt on the Potomac, pages 21 through 27, where they talk about Benjamin Banneker and the surveying of Washington, D.C. Benjamin Banneker having a photographic memory, but also is believed that Benjamin Banneker's grandfather, whose name was Banneker, is believed that he was Dogon. And we're going to talk about the Dogon of Mali and Burkina Faso, who originally come from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, who have a superior knowledge of astronomy. And we'll talk about the Sirius A and Sirius B star systems, okay? Because according to Dogon mythology, the Dogon say they come from the star Sirius, okay? Sirius. And they talk about Sirius A and Sirius B star systems. We'll deal with I'm going to show you an excerpt of the interview I did with Professor Kabahai Wata Kamene dealing with the African origins of Star Wars. We'll talk about why the ancient Egyptians stopped building pyramids in the 3rd dynasty. I'm going to show you an excerpt of the interview I did with Tony Browder, where we talked about the origin of the word pyramid as well, and the fact that there are they did not use the pyramids as tombs. There are no Nasubitis or pharaohs buried in the pyramids. They were buried underneath the pyramid. Okay? So we're going to dispel a lot of this nonsense that's out here. We'll talk about Queen T of the 18th dynasty, who was the wife of Imhotep III. She's the mother of Akhenaten, who was Imhotep IV, who changes his name to Akhenaten. And Queen T is the grandmother of Nasubiti or Pharaoh Tutankhamun, who they call King Tut. We'll talk about the relationship between Memphis, Tennessee, and Memphis in Egypt. And Memphis in Egypt was originally the city of Maafa, because Memphis, Tennessee is named after Memphis in Egypt. How many people knew that? Who have not taken this class before? And then we'll wrap up class number 6, dealing with an example of the suppression of this knowledge, okay, of this knowledge of African history, African spiritual systems, etc. And we'll show an example of this during with the fight against the Druids in Ireland. And in 432 AD, Pope Celestine I sends a British slave named Patrick into Ireland to convert the Irish to Christianity. And you may have heard me talk about the fact that Patrick was a mass murderer who killed thousands of Druids on behalf of the Christian church? Well, we're going to talk about that. Now, this is not an attack on anybody's religion. This is not an attack on anybody. If you want to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, you can go ahead and get as drunk as you want to, if you want to. And I mean, okay, you can. This is America. But as you've heard me say before, I'm not telling you don't celebrate these European holidays, but you should at least know the history of what it is that you're celebrating. Okay? You should at least know the history of what it is that you celebrate. You know, if you, how should I put this politely? Well, let me put it to you like this, right? So when the George Floyd protests were going on in 2020, I ain't participated in any of the George Floyd protests. You can protest if you want. You need meaningful change. You need policy changes. There's other things that need to happen. You can protest if you want to, but here's the main thing. See, I live in downtown Detroit. There are protests taking place downtown. I didn't know who was organizing the protests. I see all these white people in downtown Detroit protesting with signs saying F the police, well, all types of stuff. I don't know who these people are. And you had, and then it goes into, I'm trying to get the timeline straight. Okay, so May 2020, and you had because COVID was out at that time also. And I remember a lot of people were wearing masks, you know, surgical masks because of COVID. I don't know too many stories about Black people dealing with crowds of white people wearing masks that turned out well for us. Maybe you know some, I don't. So it's like, wait a second, I don't know who's organizing this protest, these events. And then you got a bunch of people with masks on, and you got a lot of white people from the suburbs coming into downtown Detroit. And one of the problems was activists, Black activists from Detroit, even though there are problems with the Detroit police force, we don't have those problems like they do in other cities. So you had like white people from outside of the city, and in some cases, probably outside of the state, bringing an energy into the protests that a lot of people, a lot of Black people inside the city and a lot of Black activists weren't projecting that type of energy. There were instances where you had white people that want to throw a brick through one of the stores in downtown Detroit, and there's Black people saying, wait a second, what you doing? We ain't trying to do that. Because a lot of those white people that were doing that don't live in the city. So they can go back out to the suburbs, wherever the hell they came from. They can go back out there after you come and trash Detroit, and then we get blamed for it. So, all right. Is everybody okay? Everybody's so quiet. I don't understand why, but all right. Okay, let's see. I want to go back to the well, let me go to this right here. Maybe I should have started with this. This is my disclaimer. Okay, so I talk about expanding the circumference of your own awareness. I got this from one of my teachers, Dr. Ray Higgins of the African Village in Atlanta. So usually when I do my presentations and do my classes, things of this nature, I usually have people put their fingers together to form a circle, and I usually say something like this. The space inside this circle represents my realm of knowledge. Everything that I think I know about whatever I think I know is represented within the circumference of this circle. I must keep in mind that there are still things to know that exist outside of the circumference of my own awareness. So just because you know everything that you know about what you know does not mean you know everything there is to know about what you know. There's still things that exist outside the circumference of your own awareness, okay? And for those who want to participate in European holidays, I encourage you to read the books from Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide, Book 1 and Book 2. Book 1 and Book 2, okay, by Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango. So I'm not telling you, now I've studied the history of all the holidays, and you see, we have broadcasts I've done recently, last couple of years, dealing with Easter, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, all of that. Okay, so you can go watch those. We have them on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. You can watch all that. So I'm not saying don't participate in those holidays, but you should at least know the history of what it is that you are participating in, because that will probably change how you decide to participate in. Okay. Also, this is the book I was looking for, Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhart. I interviewed her around 2014 on the African History Network show. A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice. This is one of the best books dealing with the history of African American cooperative economics, co-ops. So that's why we reference this in this class, that helps give us a foundation to understand the history. This is what I'm telling you. It took 7 years to develop this class to the point that it is. Okay, so I want to go back to the class lesson plan that I've put together, because I developed a curriculum. I put together over 200 slides. I developed a course outline, all of this. Now, class number 7, we're going to deal with Hannibal Barca, the Punic Wars. Hold on, let's get this here. Class number 7 will deal with Hannibal Barca, the Punic Wars, and the African Moors who take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe. So in this class, we look at this information chronologically as much as possible, okay? Sometimes we go a little bit out of order, but we try to deal with it chronologically as much as possible. So Carthage existed 813 BCE to 146 BCE. We'll talk about the Punic Wars as well between Carthage and Rome. Hannibal Barca and the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC. We'll deal with Hannibal being defeated at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. We'll talk about why Africa was not named after a Roman general named Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. Okay. We'll look at the development of European societies based on the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, the development of European secret societies, I should say. Okay, that's an excerpt from Anthony Browder's book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Who was Bishop Nicholas, who became a saint? Now, Bishop Nicholas was actually African. He was a saint he was a bishop from Myra, third and 4th century AD, and he became canonized as a saint. Basically 4th century BC in Myra. He was of African descent, but a lot of your early Christian saints were Africans also. We'll talk about center class, from center class, which is Dutch. Center class means St. Nicholas. This is where you get Santa Claus from the Dutch mythological character of center class. And center class had a sidekick. Center class had a sidekick named Zwarte Piet, Black Pete. and Black Pete was a Moor. So we're going to get deep into this history because this shows more evidence of the history of the Moors in Europe also, dealing with Sinterklaas, Zwarte Piet, and the celebration of Sinterklaas coming into the Netherlands in early November. And he comes on a steamship from Spain. And Spain is where the Moors go in 711 AD. It was called the Iberian Peninsula at that point in time, 711 AD, but that's Spain and Portugal. Okay. Zwarte Piet, Black Pete, was a Moor who was a helper of Sinterklaas. He is still celebrated in the Netherlands today. Europeans put on blackface, an afro wig, gold hoop earrings, and parade around as Black Pete, Zwarte Piet. We talk about what patron saints are and what is the relationship between patron saints and Christianity and the Neteru in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, who were the deities, okay? The deities in ancient Kemet. Who was Queen Charlotte Sophia, who was of African Moorish ancestry, and she was the wife of King George III in England, and King George III is the king that the 13 colonies are revolting against during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. We'll talk about who were the Moors as well, okay? And we have a video clip to show you dealing with who the Moors were. We'll talk about the origin of the word Moor, and we'll deal with the Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula, first in 710 AD, Common Era, for the reconnaissance mission, then in 711 AD, led by General Tariq ibn Ziyad. And they're going to conquer the southern portion of Spain, and then they're going to go all throughout Europe. We'll talk about the patron saint of Germany, Saint Maurice, who was a Moor. And why are there African Moors heads on the national flags of Corsica and Sardinia? Corsica is a French island in the Mediterranean. Sardinia is an Italian island in the Mediterranean. So we'll deal with that in class number 7. We'll get into understanding the history of the Moors. Class number 8 will deal with how did the Moors lose power in Spain? And we'll talk about the Crusades starting in about 1096 AD, Common Era, and the rise of the Spanish conquest. And we'll talk about Christopher Columbus in the Renaissance era, Christopher Columbus, and setting sail August 3rd, 1492. Later in the same year that the African Moors lose control of the last stronghold in Granada, January 2nd, 1492. Okay. We'll look at a clip of a lecture from Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay, who also has an essay in the book, Golden Age of the Moor. And Golden Age of the Moor is one of the best books dealing with the history of the Moors also. Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Renoko Rashidi has an essay in here. Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay, Jan Carew has one, Dr. John G. Jackson, but also Dr. Wayne Chandler, because I've interviewed Dr. Wayne Chandler years ago, interviewed Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay 2010. I've interviewed Renoko Rashidi 6 times. So this is a deep book, Golden Age of the Moor. So that's one of the books that we reference in the class also. Now, let's see here. Let's continue. So then we'll look at the Crusades and the Dark Ages, medieval period. First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. We'll talk about who were the Knights Templar. Who were the Knights Templar? And the Knights Templar were taught by the African Moors, and they're taking the teachings from ancient Africa, and they're learning from the Moors. And we'll deal with how the Knights Templar lost power as well. What's the connection between the Knights Templar and Freemasonry? We'll look at excerpts of Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism by Dr. John Henry Clark, and the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade in 1441 with the Portuguese. Now, class number 9 will deal with the doctrine of discovery, Dum Diversas, 1452. We'll look at what a papal bull is, coming from the Catholic Church. The Treaty of Tordesillas, June 17th, 1492, where the Pope divides the non-Christian world between Spain and Portugal and sends them out to conquer the non-Christian world. We'll look at Spain beginning to take African slaves into the Caribbean islands right about 1502. Okay, this is after Columbus. This is after 1492, and we know Columbus goes on 4 voyages, and he never comes to the land we call the United States of America. The closest he comes here is Cuba, which is about 90 miles away. We'll look at the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade, and usually when conversations of the transatlantic slave trade take place, the asiento of August 1518 under King Charles V is not talked about. The asiento de negros, and this drastically expands the transatlantic slave trade, and we deal with the role that Right Reverend Bishop Bartholomew de las Casas has, where de las Casas calls for the African people to be enslaved as opposed to Native Americans. To a lesser extent, he says white people, but it's going to be majority African people. And he's trying to save the souls of Native Americans, and he says they've suffered enough. He later quickly regrets it and reverses course, but it's pretty much too late by then. We'll look at what was the middle passage of the transatlantic slave trade. We'll analyze the essay that Dr. Maleficetti Asante wrote, refuting the op-ed article by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. in 2010, the op-ed article that Henry Louis Gates Jr. wrote for the New York Times called Ending the Slavery Blame Game, where Dr. Gates puts equal blame and culpability on Africa and Africans as he does on Europe for the transatlantic slave trade. That's simple Simon ass nonsense. That's just blatantly false. And Gates' whole game is to absolve Europeans of responsibility for reparations, culpability for reparations, all this. Gates is backed by European corporations like Bank of America. You look at the ones that sponsor his Knowing Your Roots on PBS, all of this. This is Gates' whole game. We'll look at when did the first African come to America that we know of by name. We'll analyze Bacon's Rebellion of 1675 and 1676 in Virginia that planted the seeds of race-based slavery, Bacon's Rebellion. And these rebels in December of 1875 are going to burn down the town of Jamestown, Virginia. And they're made up of enslaved African people, free African Americans, white indentured servants, poor whites. But it's a fascinating history. And it plants the seeds of race-based slavery, because it's going to be after this that you're going to have African people enslaved in the colonies for perpetuity. You're going to have chattel slavery. It's going to be after Bacon's Rebellion. And it's going to be right about 1781 in the colony of Virginia that they're going to start using the term white widespread to describe what we call white people, to describe Europeans, to break up the alliance between poor white people and African people. It's a fascinating history. And we're dealing with the consequences of Bacon's Rebellion today. We'll deal with the history, did African Americans own slaves and why? We'll deal with that complicated history. Because about half of the slaves that were owned in this country, right around, let me see, it was about around 1840 when Dr. Carter G. Woodson looked at 1840, right around that period of time. About half of the slaves that we own would have been family members, because you had African Americans who got their freedom, who bought other family members out of slavery, who bought their family members to get them out of slavery, to get them away from slave owners. We'll deal with the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712. I hate to break your heart, but Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay, this is class number 10. So that concludes class number 9. And class number 10, the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712. We'll deal with the tragedy of the slave ship, the Lewiston, January 1st, 1738. The origins of negative images in the media and how they're rooted in slavery. And, we'll conclude with, some more questions and answers. Now, you can ask questions all throughout the class. There may be some additional things. There are going to be a few other things that I add in as well. But that gives you a basic framework understanding of this course, okay? So how's everybody doing? How do you like the content here that I've laid out that we're going to cover here in this course? What do you think about it? Do you think you learn a lot in this class? I'm going to post a link here. And I think that's a link that you can, you should be able to, that's a PDF form. We're going to put that also in our the course in Learn World, where our online school is, Learn World. You'll be able to download it from Learn World. I have to add that in. Okay. All right. Now, if okay, the link won't. Yeah, I'll take care of that. We'll put that in the Learn World class. Okay. The link. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I did that. I created the PDF, so we'll get that uploaded to Learn World. So you'll be able to view that and download it. Okay, now you can register for this full class at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com or africanhistorynetwork.com. Got both domain names. It's right at the top of the page. So when you scroll down, you'll see it. And let me flip over to this here. Yeah. You scroll down, you'll see it. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, 10-week online history course. It's on sale $80, regularly $130. You can use your debit card or credit card. We'll make some updates to the website. But you can use your debit card or credit card. Just click right here, register here. It takes you to our Learn World page and our Learn World school. And let me flip over to that just a second here. And what you'll do is just click on enroll. Where is that? Hold on. Go to this here. Right here. Okay, so it takes you here at our online school and scroll down. Okay, so just click on enroll. Okay, and it has a description here also of the class, but just click on enroll and it takes you through, you'll type in your name, email address, create a password, and it'll go ahead and process the payment for you. All right. Now, also, we have in digital download format a 15 lecture bundle pack that I've done over the past few years. This is African History Awakens the African Mind for Mental Death. And it's a collection of some of my lectures. 15, you actually get 16 because you'll get the lecture I did on the new Black Panther movie, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, from November 22, November 2022. So you actually get 16 lectures. This is on sale $75. Okay, and it lists all the lectures here that you get as well. So I'm going to put this link here. This is in digital download format. If you want it in DVD format is $100, but digital download format is $75, and you can start watching that right away. All right. So that'll keep you busy, especially for African American History Month. You can share that with your children also. You can, this content for this class you can use with your children. I would say the content is PG-13. It's not overly graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing, anything like that. It's nothing like that. So you can use it with your children also. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, 80-100 articles we reference. So it's very interactive as well. You can ask questions here, and you can email me also, like after class. If you have questions, you can email me as well. AHNshow at theafricanhistorynetwork.com. AHNshow at theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can email me. Now, if you want to support us through Cash App or PayPal, you can do so. You have the information on the homepage of our website. But $ the AHN Show through Cash App and through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. We have that information there, and I put it on the homepage of our website because some people set up fake African History Network Cash App accounts, and they've been stealing money from us. So I'm still trying to get those shut down. Let me post this information here. Okay, yeah, just posted it right there. And we have it on, you scroll down the website, and I'm gonna move it farther towards the top of the website as well, because I'm working on updating the website. Let me show this to you here. Okay, right there. Okay, so you scroll down, information on the class, information on our radio show, our broadcast, the African History Network show, Sundays, 9 p.m., 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our digital Sunday night show, and it's an audio podcast platforms. It has a link there to our Blog Talk Radio page. Then we have right here, PayPal, Cash App. So this is our Cash App, our Cash App tag, $ the AHN Show, SHOW, through Cash App. Now these other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. There's 6 of them out there that I've identified. I'm still trying to get them shut down because Cash App is slow as hell. But all these other ones out here are not me. They're impersonating us. They've been stealing money from us. So that's why I put our link here as well. That's why I created this graphic. Put the link here. Click right here, Cash App. On the link, that's our QR code. Okay, so that's our actual Cash App tag. And that's our QR code for Cash App. Then we also have the information here for PayPal as well. Okay. All right. So look, that's going to do it for us. You have any questions before we get out of here? Who still needs to register for this full 10-week online class? Today was an introduction. We're going to get deep into the class next Sunday. There's some bonus content. When you register, there's bonus content that you can start watching as well to get ready for the class. We'll get this course outline, the lesson plan. We'll get that in the Learn World account as well for this course offering. So you'll be all set. But you're going to learn a lot. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. And you've probably never seen a class like this before. It's taken me 7 years to develop the class. to the point that it is now. So I'm pretty happy where it is now, because I knew where I wanted to get the class to, but it took time to get it there. And I have like most of the articles, things like that in the binder. So this is, now which binder is this? Because I have two binders for my second class that I teach. Hold on, these are all books for the class. This is a file folder on reparations, because I'm doing some lectures and work on reparations. This is my file folder dealing with reparations. For those that don't know, so like this is I do extensive research. So these are just, this is half of one of the 2 stacks of articles I have next to me. This is half of one of the 2 stacks of articles. I have like thousands of articles printed up here in the office. I need to clean out my file cabinet or get another file cabinet, one of them, because my file cabinet is full. This is, I want to show you this. Where is, okay, this is my file folder on Christopher Columbus. It's right here. Because Columbus is crucial to understanding the transatlantic slave trade and the expansion of the slave trade. Okay, so the binder for this class is, that's 1, 2, should be down here at the bottom. Let me see, which one is this? Now this is for Black resistance movements. Oh. I think this is it here. Okay, that's Black resistance, and then there's this one here. So 2 classes that I teach, and I developed the curriculum for both classes. So this is the file folder. This is not file folder. This is the binder that I teach from, with the articles that we deal with in the class, things like that. And I have broken up into class sessions. So it's taken 7 years to get this course to like this point where I really wanted to be, and get my class lesson plans developed in advance of teaching all the classes. So now I've got, this is the first time I got all my class lesson plans laid out. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself. All right. All right, look, we have to get, so did y'all have any questions before we get out of here? Y'all still so quiet. All right. Tell your friends about this class, register for it. You can email me your questions also. And we're going to learn a lot here as well. All right, so get ready. Okay, Stephen said no questions. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever.